there is a reason why we're attacking Nigeria, and this is not getting any amount of attention. I mean,
I think there's a few reasons. I mean, it's never just one thing, but yeah, it's hugely related. Everything ultimately, I believe that's going on right now, other than Epstein crap, but I'm talking globally, is really related to the new Cold War with China. Okay, that's what is going on, and us trying to crush the Belt and Road, us trying to figure out how to get out of the financial problem that we're in right now, and a lot of things. So I think that there are a lot of variables, but at the end of the day, I do think it kind of it gets to China, trying to beat China.
Well, this gentleman named Will's Talks pretty much crystallizes exactly what you've been saying, which is, and to me, this is sort of a carve out of BRICS in a way. The only way that our empire is not going to supersede the interests of a given nation is if there is a camaraderie and understanding amongst neighboring nations or nations around the world that understand that if we don't band together, we're finished. The U.S.
When you say we are finished, who are you referring to?
Oh, nations like Nigeria, nations like Niger. And
no, what do you say we're finished if we don't, I mean.
I'm referring to those nations that are under the thumb of empire because they have the natural resources that we want to get our hands on.
Yeah, again, and whoever's saying the Belt and Road is not going to happen, China's broke, no. Check your news sources on that. Not the case.
Yeah, China's not broke. Again,
China's not broke. They're doing a lot better than we are right now. So
China has a population bomb issue that's coming, but that doesn't mean that their country isn't in better shape than ours.
Yeah,
that's a fool's errand to even think for a second that what we have in front of us is not a collapsing empire. It is what we have.
Oh yeah.
We're going to get to Breonna Joy Gray in a little bit when Jacob Force comes on, because we're going to talk about what happened with the young lady, Anna Dyke, who got pulled from the Freedom Flotilla and was taken advantage of by the most.
She was SA'd, right? We're not allowed to say the R word. Is that the thing? I don't know what gets us in trouble.
Well, just say grape, red grape, purple grape, things like that.
Yeah, whatever. She was SA'd. And we are going to talk about that with our guest, because the fact that, and we will connect it to the fact that is that why Bree got deplatformed on Instagram, was for that.
Yeah. And so Will Talks explains exactly why we're saber rattling with Nigeria now.
Bombed Nigeria, and everyone is misreporting it.
Myself included, because I forgot to mention one of the most important things. And that is this, the Alliance of Sahel States. This is Nigeria, and this is a union of home-ruled African countries that have recently kicked out their former colonizer, France, which America is famously allied with. And this alliance just called recently for a joint large-scale operation against extremists.
This is very important, because we saw what happened at the beginning of Trump's presidency this year, when the leader of Burkina Faso basically said, I'm not playing your game. I'm not playing your game, and you're going to have to come and get us. And of course, in these war-torn countries, in many instances, they typically have very large arsenals of weapons, and they're not afraid to use them. This is part of the reason why even you said, while we are attacking Venezuela, we're attacking them from the air and the sea. We're not attacking them on the ground, because the citizens that live there, they're actually ready for us.
Well, what we're going to do in a place like Venezuela is we'll have like rebel armies, and we'll give weapons to different rebel groups, and we'll have ground forces that aren't our forces. Like, that's more what I think would happen in Venezuela. And I think that if they did send in ground troops, it would be to kidnap Maduro, and it would be a particular operation. But what's going on here is we do not like these three countries not wanting to give their resources to empire. Correct. They don't like that.
And this is also where I do break from somebody like Steve Grumbine, because there is no question that the intention of these nations, and they feel that the best way to do it is to devalue the US dollar. And by doing that, they are going to plunge our nation into obscurity because our dollar is not tied to anything. It's tied to the promise that the United States will always pay its bills. And as we know, and this isn't a question of we're 38 trillion in debt. No, it's a question of what is the true value of our currency if we have basically become nothing more than a war economy. If all we attempt to do is run roughshod over the entire world, what do you think is eventually going to happen? No one is just going to take this lying down. It would be no different than how a lot of people felt, including myself, after 9/11, when somebody decided, again, we know what the facts are now, but at the time, we were like, oh, they came into our country and attacked us. We have to fight back. Well, think about how these people feel when we're raining hell from above on top of them all the time because we think that their resources belong to us. The audacity of people like Trump and Netanyahu to think that they can continue to get away with this is insanity.
And the fact that they're doing it with this sort of false, I mean, I don't know, I forget what he gets in. Does he get into the fact that they're saying it has to do with protecting Christians that are being genocided?
Totally have to take out the Muslims because they're attacking Christians?
No, it's about, they're saying it's like that's what they're doing. It's completely not true. No, there are definitely Christian people that are getting killed, but it's not because they're Christian. Right. So, and if they cared about Christians, then they might care about the Palestinian Christians, but they don't really care about Christians. So,
guys, a side quest real quick regarding the petrodollar. So basically what happened after Nixon took us off the gold standard in 71 and inflation skyrocketed shortly thereafter, what ended up happening was we made a Godfather offer to Saudi Arabia to basically ensure that two things were going to happen. Number one, their oil was basically going to become our oil, and we were going to offer protection. It was a protection racket for them to make sure that no other country could come in and invade the Saudi oil fields. And by that measurement, on the flip side, it became, now you will trade all of your oil reserves to every nation around the world in the US dollar. Now, what BRICS is attempting to do to circumvent Saudi Arabia, since they're not going to change, is to basically form alliances led by Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa to figure out a way to deal in their own resources, whether it be crude oil or a plethora of other resources that are necessary, and do not trade with the US dollar. When that becomes the consensus around the world, the U.S. empire will officially collapse. And
it is happening. It's not if. It's not if. And I see people like, I think Ray, I think you're in for a rude awakening. That's what I think. BRICS is definitely something. We covered this a couple of weeks ago that I want to say it was 185 countries that China has already have now been able to trade in the yuan, and they're having, and their money system is doing a lot better than ours. Their economy is doing better than ours. It just is. It's true. And this is just what's going to happen. Now you could be in denial. I mean, I think people need to be prepared for what is coming, but we should let this continue.
Extremists that Trump claims to be fighting in Nigeria. For context, these 3 states, as well as I believe one of these now, within the past 2 years have undergone mass revolutions against the French colonizers to kick them out and retain control of their resources. And America, through labeling them terrorists, spreading and propagating mass propaganda campaigns against them, and at times enabling actual military violence against them, have clearly labeled and expressed their interest in ending this home rule. Like, for example, did you see that story about the criminalization of homosexuality in Burkina Faso? I wonder why they mentioned that and not the criminalization of homosexuality in Saudi Arabia. America.
Well, just like they're concerned about the Christians in Nigeria, but they're not concerned about like the Christians, let's say, in Syria. Right?
Yeah, we wonder why. Now, this is another example of it's kind of, and again, we're not going to have time tonight, guys, to get into the Somali, Minnesota story. We probably will on Thursday. Get enraged at what you want to get enraged at. You can get enraged at a multi-million-dollar corruption scheme that is taking place in Minneapolis, St. Paul. And I have no doubt that it's a legitimate criminal operation that's going on. But if you pay close attention, It's not a question of dealing with the criminal enterprise. What it has become is it's a red herring to say we need to kick all Somalis out of the United States.
Well, yeah, they're working on building up a narrative. They're working on building a narrative. So, yeah.
And the same thing will be true whether it is Nigerians, Nigers, any of the people that are in any of these countries that line up against the United States. Any of their people living in this country will immediately become enemies. It will be like internment camps for Japanese all over again. That's
what do you call people from Niger?
Nigerians? I don't know.
I don't know, because then what's Nigeria? Because then you call people from Nigeria Nigerians. So then what do you call people from? What about the people from Niger? Are they also Nigerians, but they're just in it? Like, I don't know. All right, let this play, because we need to know about, because I'm loving this president in Burkina Faso.
Because ally. So yes, violence in this region is not only to immediately grab the resources of Nigeria, which already has quite a strong security relationship with America, but also to justify American imperial violence in this region to destabilize the countries that certainly do not: Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. And that is because the American empire has always relied on extracting resources from the global south, and these three home rule countries greatly threaten that. So
there it is. And ultimately, why do we need to totally commandeer it as opposed to just work with those people and trade with them, right? Why is it that we have to go in there and take it over and commandeer it? And that's where we circle back to the new Cold War with China and about making sure that we can produce and have resources. But it's too little too late is the problem. And we just look like we're grasping at straws.
Oh, I agree.
Threaten that. So it is important not only to undermine the myths that they make up to justify this violence, but search for the real reason they are aiming to inflict it. And that, from my analysis, will always come down to the American empire continuing to do what it always does, extracting from the global south. And we should not search for excuses for them to do it, and we should destroy each and every excuse they do. There is no Christian genocide. There is no validity to them attacking ISIL when they also funded ISIL. And they are certainly not protecting African sovereignty by attempting to undermine popular regimes that literally ousted colonizers. It is also illegal under both federal and international law. Condemn this on all fronts and tolerate no lies about it.
Word.
Now, a very important point here that I don't want anyone to be lost on anybody here is that when you think about all of these terrorist organizations, even though you say one man's terrorist is another person's freedom fighter, all of these organizations, particularly they're funded by Netanyahu. Do people not see the scam?
Well, it's a circle. It's like a giant circle jerk with them. But we know that the term terrorist, right? That's a construct. That's a complete construct. Like, that's a made up in terms of there is no person that falls into that once you look at nuance, right? Like it isn't necessarily black and white. Like I always say, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. And by we, you say that very loosely, United States empire uses that term as to punish and go after political opposition and people that are potentially leading popular movements against empire. So that term is used just basically for political purposes.